Okay, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee, and we're on Thursday, 23rd January, 9:41 in the morning. We had really interesting weather this morning. We did have rain, but it was more like drizzle, sprinkle, maybe, I don't know how long, most I'd say an hour, maybe less. Now we're probably going to have partially cloudy and sunny the rest of the day with a high of 62. So it's going to be cold, but not that bad. Okay. Um, please pray for Chief, not just for his healing, but I'm pretty sure he's in mourning. He barks sometimes in the middle of the night, and I went in there last night to see if there was anything wrong. You know, first I went in and I thought maybe it was too hot because I had the heater, so the room was warm, so I shut the heater off. And he was still barking. You know, I took him to make sure he knew we had water in the room, you know, and I put him on his mat, everything. And then I believe the Lord showed me he's lonely because Yafa's not there anymore. He spent the last 7 or 8 years with Yafa, and he gets lonely. So I left the light on, that helped. And then I got up in the morning early and he was barking, and I just went in to see him. And as soon as I came in to see him, he stopped barking. So I was really worried about him, but I think he's just mourning now. I think it sank in that he misses Yafa and doesn't like being alone, you know. We don't let him, I'm sorry, Chief, we don't let him run around the house by himself because he can decide, because there's still two big girl dogs in the house, he'll start marking. He's got a problem in that area, and that makes a problem for us. And so we are not that interested in that happening. So he has his own room, but okay, appreciate the prayers. And we have another prayer request for where do you go? EZ Echo Zebra EZ Echo Zebra EZ. The prayer request is for healing from the flu for EZ. Okay, let me get this stuff off so we know. And it was done. So I got a new credit card because one of my credit cards here expired, and they now send them to the house with a courier. And this guy was definitely had security training, and he went through all my credentials and everything, you know. And then he gave me the card. So I said, "Do I have to activate the card?" And he said, "Well, you know, yeah, you got to read it, something like that." So I read it, and it said that you don't have to activate the card; they'll activate it automatically. But you got to allow 4 days, and they'll send you an SMS when they do it. So that's kind of interesting. They do that, but there was like serious security concerns with this guy, you know. But he was very nice and polite and everything, you know. All right, let me go into the live stream and make sure we got a live stream. That's always important. Nice and polite. We got a live stream. All right, let me sound and picture. Check the chat. I just get rid of these nasty people. Imagine what kind of life you have to have where your great pleasure is to run around posting nasty remarks in other people's live streams for pleasure. Could you imagine what kind of unhappiness these people have? My gosh. Okay, let me get my posts up in the chat. It'll take a moment or two, go fast. Get my email up. You can put prayer requests or toast requests up in the chat, or if you want more privacy, you can email me and just give me the initials of the person we're going to be praying for or tossing, and we'll go that way for more privacy. God knows who they are. Okay, all done. Let me do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 So I'm still waiting for Trump and the gun control, but I think, the reciprocity with the permits amongst all 50 states. But I believe he's going to let his bills go through Congress and do it that way versus executive order. So it's probably going to take a little time. That's going to cause a lot of blowback. He eliminated DEI and affirmative action, I believe, in the federal government, or a lot of the federal government, or all of the federal government, or I think most of it. This is extremely likely to cause blowback. Okay. More problems, are going to result from this. I'm rather certain. What Biden did with gun control was, Biden was a cowardly guy, He liked to stay behind the scenes and disguise things and work concealed and stuff like that until he started pardoning all his family members. So he sent the ATF around to the gun stores, the gun dealers. Now, they have two kinds of ATF agents, or they did last time I checked. One was investigators. They're given a 2-card credential that looks pretty impressive, but they don't have a badge, and they don't have a gun, and they don't have powers of arrest, and so forth. They're more or less investigative clerks. I believe the FBI uses people like that too. So if they wanted to go to a university and pull a transcript because the person's applying for a security clearance, they would send the clerk to pick it up, give them a letter, and take it. Or if they wanted a utility bill record or, something like that, they use these guys. Employment record, things of this nature. So the ATF investigators would go to the gun stores under Biden and look for every single transaction that was done. The yellow sheet, they call it. And they would target stores that they thought would be prone to making errors. Now, they got these people for clerical errors, and they were blowing them up and pulling their licenses. And Biden probably stopped in the vicinity of, or took out about 300 gun dealers around there. Now, these were not people selling unregistered guns or illegal guns, or, they were making clerical errors. Now, I was in the gun business briefly, a very long time ago, and we'd a shop, and people would come in the shop, and I would be showing them guns. So I have to be very careful. Of course, I've got guns out on the counter. People are handling them. People are asking me questions. Could I see this? Could I see that? And I'm taking guns back. And then somebody's buying a gun at the same time. So I'm filling out the yellow sheet, right? And I made an error here and there. And one error I made was I sent an application in for the sale of a gun to the state. It was California this time. And the kid was under 18, and I didn't pick it up because I'm doing a million different things, and it comes back from the state that you put an app in for somebody underage. They didn't get mad, really. They just said it's denied. Of course, this is why. And, we all had a laugh about that in the store. At the end of the day, I used to tally my cash up, because a lot of people were paying cash. Well, we had a bookkeeper. She tallied the cash. And some days I was over. Some days I was under, but it was typically less than $5 or $10. I wasn't trying to gyp anybody. It's just, this is the way it is when you're watching this. We had some guys once come into the store, and they weren't right. They were Nazi white supremacists, and I caught the guy looking at our alarm system, And that was pretty hard. I didn't like that, So then, we used to lock up about 6 o'clock. And we had all kinds of security because the store used to sell class 3, which would be silencers, full automatic. We were also a big dealer with the Barrett 50 caliber, which I don't know if that was also a restricted weapon in California, not by the Fed, by the state. And they had to be locked up in a separate room, and only certain people could access them. And I didn't put my name on that license because they could search your house, and I didn't want it. The owner was on there. So after this guy was looking at the alarm system a few days later, the owner of the store calls me up in the evening and said, you know what just happened? I said, what? He said, these guys, he mentioned the guy who went to the gun store when we were closed and the door was open. He opened the door and the alarm went off. And it was still daylight, it was summer. So the guy just stayed there. He didn't want to run away because people would see him and get his car and his tag number. And he told the police what happened. Now, the owner used to lock the doors. I didn't have the key to lock the door. So I told him this guy was studying the alarm system, and I think he picked the lock because he was afraid he forgot to lock the door. But anyway, nothing happened. But this is the kind of people you get, One time I had a guy in the store that I was pretty sure was going to rob the store. And we had a friend in the store that used to come around a lot to just hang out. He was a former Navy SEAL, and he worked as a private detective. He basically knew Vietnamese, and he was doing lie detector tests for companies hiring Vietnamese people. He also traded in rare exotic fish that he raised in his garage. So he was a fun guy. He also worked as a bouncer. So he came in the store, and I passed him a note, and I said, I think this guy's going to rob the store. And the way he responded was, I would say, brilliant. He was well trained. So he starts engaging this guy in conversations with machine gunning questions to him. And then we found out that the guy worked in an armored car company, and he was okay. He was just, acting a little unusual. We had a lot of... Once the ATF came into the store, it was rather comical. Two guys came in, the senior agent and the new agent. He was breaking a new guy in. I was able to tell that easily. And he starts talking to me about guns, which is normal. And then he asked me if he can see, we used to sell these Australian machine guns, if he could see one of the guns. Now, it's illegal under California state gun law to show not federal, to show somebody a full auto weapon, a class 3, without him having a license, state and federal. So I said, do you have a license? And he said, I do. I have a license from Canada. That's how silly they are. And he showed to me he had an actual California machine gun license. Now, how many people going around like that? I mean, it's ridiculous, Maybe a retired police chief or something like that might have it, even them, I mean, it's ridiculous how many of these are running around. So I said, well, that's not valid. I can't show it to you. Why not? It's the law, Could lose our license. Then I noticed that he was holding a key fob that you would use to open the door, take off the alarm on the car. I was holding it in his hand and was kind of pointing it at me, which is obviously a transmitter. So then I just went to the window and I looked outside and I saw a van there. It was a carpet cleaning van, right? So, I used to work in law enforcement, so I knew exactly what was going on. So then I dressed him down without actually saying that I know you're an agent, So his whole demeanor changed. He started showing me, he takes his wallet out. He had about perhaps an inch thick wad of money in his wallet, stuffed. He was, It was so funny. I mean, it was hilarious, And Then they left. I never heard anything about it, you know. Those were interesting days, but I left. It's hard as heck to make any money in the gun business, you know. Unless you are huge and you're selling like, 30 guns a day or something like that. And you can buy at really low prices, and yeah, it's really hard. We used to run a gimmick. We ran ads, and the people we'd sell them the gun for 10% over cost, and we showed them our cost book, and we got we got several sales a day like that. People were buying expensive hunting rifles, even African game rifles occasionally, because they'd save hundreds of dollars, So we did well. Tons of cops were buying from us. Cops don't have to go through a waiting period, so you got to get their police ID and record it. So one guy, a detective from one of the little cities in the area, bought a pistol from me. He was really a nice guy, and he was real excited on getting his pistol, and he paid, and he walks out the store with his gun. And I'm putting the paperwork away, and I realized that I think it was under the paperwork the guy left his credential case, his badge, his ID card in the leather wallet. So I said, oh gosh, this guy. So I ran out into the street and I found him. I had to run after his car. And I said, wait a minute, wait. So he looked at me, stop, what's up? I said, here, you left your badge. He looked like an idiot. He was so, he was grateful, but he was so mad at himself. All right, so what's Israel's other war? In the West Bank, which is biblically Samaria and Judea, there's Hamas agents there. I expect PIJ, Hezbollah as well. The West Bank has someplace between 2.5 and 4.5 million Arabs. We don't know how many live there. Okay? We issue them ID cards that don't allow them to get into Israel. They have to get a special permission on top of that. But how many of them really have ID cards and how many of them don't, who knows, We don't know how many are there. The capital of this atrocity called the West Bank is Ramallah, where Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, has his location. The cities that are flaring up are, basically Jenin, Hebron is another one. They vary. Right now, the big problem is Jenin. So these terrorists are entrenched in there. And they're basically fighting our military and our police forces. Predominantly the military, more than the others. They can't easily just slip into Israel, okay? So it's so bad we're using aircraft, drones, helicopters, bombing structures there. It's like getting to look like Gaza. We had to attack a hospital because they were doing the same nonsense, holding up in a command center in a hospital. Some nights we killed 10, some nights 3, some nights 25, plus wounded. Well, we got a war going on there. And who's doing it? Iran and Hamas. Not so much Hezbollah, but they're in there. And Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ. And what are they doing? They're trying to keep Israel at war constantly. Okay? Constantly. To wear us down. Well, what about what we did to them? The Gazans now under the ceasefire are returning back to the north, and they're pitching tents at the ruins of their houses. I think it's over 90% of all the structures have been damaged or destroyed. I mean, the place looks like a garbage dump. I mean, it's just rubble. You see rubble, and then you see a building, and then more rubble and rubble. I mean, the devastation is massive. Massive. I'm telling you, it's massive. What went would be the sewage would be bad because of all the bombs and artillery, right? The water lines would go. They don't have gas lines like America. They get tanks of propane. So that's not affected. There are no gas lines. It would be too dangerous to run gas lines with all the fighting in there, the roads are gone. How do you drive your car in rubble? Well, if you got a really big, 4x4 with huge tires, you probably can. They don't have these things. The traffic lights, I'm sure, are out. There's no parking spaces. Stores are to a good extent gone. They have open air markets, basically, called the shuk. That's what we call them in Israel, too, a shuk or a shuk. Schools are gone, hospitals are gone, government buildings are gone. Everything. Offices, businesses, it's all gone. It's all gone. Are these people paying rent? No. So, what do they use to live on? Well, they get all kinds of aid internationally from all kinds of organizations. By the way, guess where the hostages were predominantly kept? They told us. In United Nations buildings in Gaza, which wouldn't have been bombed. Yes, in UN physical building facilities that were keeping hostages. And we're supposed to believe the UN workers knew nothing about it. Ha ha ha. So, do you think because we ruined their houses, now when you ruin their houses, all their possessions go, their clothes, their pictures, their letters, whatever they're saving, their furniture, all that is gone. Right? It's gone. You think they like Israel now? You see, we're in the year of recompenses. Read Isaiah 34:8. I'll read it to you. Churches don't teach this, which is not my fault. And if you want to disbelieve it because Pastor Bob or Pastor Mary doesn't teach it, that's pretty sad, because it is in your Bible. Isaiah 34:8. For it's the day of the Lord's vengeance and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. That controversy word is not correctly translated. The dispute or the fight over Zion, which is Israel. Okay? They don't want us here. There's also 90-something nations in the UN, 94, that support a Palestinian state. They don't want us here either. You getting the picture yet? This is Jeremiah 30:11. What is Jeremiah 30:11? It's an unfulfilled prophecy associated with the birth of a nation in a day, which is the day of redemption when Yeshua appears in the clouds. It's not 1948. For I am with thee, saith Jehovah, to salvation thee, Yasha thee. Though I make a full end of all the heathen nations whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of thee, but I will correct thee in measure and will not leave thee altogether unpunished. Well, obviously we've been punished by many wars over the years, so this last one has punished us too. Hundreds of soldiers are dead, many more are wounded. Civilians in Israel have been killed by terrorism. We've had our economy stifled by idiot Biden and his practices and so forth. But let me tell you what else is going on. There's a tremendous amount of mental illness in Israel with people. Okay? People are taking psych drugs, sleeping medicine, anti-anxiety, anti-depression. Children are at risk. Lots of children had to leave their homes for many months. The ones in the south by Gaza have returned, but the ones in the north are still not back near Lebanon. And there's constant red alerts going to bomb shelters, hearing explosions in the sky, terrorist attacks around the streets. Lots of Israelis are scared about terrorist attacks. That idiot Biden, instead of handing out the old IDF weapons to all the Jews in Israel, which this bomb would never do, which would curtail the terrorist attacks probably by, 90%. They're still going to do it, but you're going to reduce it. And when they start doing it, if everybody's walking around with a gun, you take them down. But all the world leaders with Satan don't like guns in the hands of the people because they know that they're doing a lot of dirty deeds that they could wind up going to prison for, and they're afraid of it getting exposed, so they don't want the people to have guns. That's the long and the short and the tall. While a lot of Israelis have guns, Netanyahu curtails it, makes it extremely difficult, and he's an idiot. He hates us, apparently, by his actions. Look at his actions. Why wouldn't he just break out 500,000 guns, the old guns that the IDF has, and hand them out to the Jews? Obviously, there's a threat because he hates us. Do you think he serves the God of Israel, Jehovah, and Yeshua HaMashiach? Come on, wake up. Look at his actions. Okay, so we're getting a lot of terrorist attacks now daily. And this is Iran is behind this too, and Iran is supporting them economically. Iran recently smuggled money into Lebanon on civilian aircraft from another airplane. This is what our intelligence services are telling us, and they are continuing to pay Hezbollah. So what's going to stop Iran from paying Hezbollah is knocking out their oil refineries, their natural gas and oil pipelines, their ports and piers, where they offload the oil. Then the oil stops, and the natural gas stops. And then Iran dries up. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's easy. Why don't we do it? Because the world hates the Jews. Period. You've got to come to grips with that. Some of you know this guy that runs around teaching nonsensical, alarmist, news stories to scare people, has a radio show, and he hates Israel. And he ran a story a while ago saying, I got sick and I had a heart attack or something, and these Jewish doctors worked on me and it was so great. That's anti-Semitism, okay? That's not real. He comes out with a thing yesterday that says, I can give you the drift of it. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'll give you the general drift of what he said. And it was so very hateful against the Jews. It's going to get it up in a second. TikTok came out with a thing, whereas if you say Free Palestine, they call it a violation of their community standards, and they remove the post, and I guess they give the person a strike of some sort. I don't know what they do on TikTok, but see, Free Palestine means anti-Israel, pro-war, and stuff like that. He calls us a wretched group of impostors claiming to be Israel when they are not. When they are not. So he's saying we're not Israel. Now this guy says he's a Christian too. I think he's really a Catholic, he says. Show themselves to be of their father, the devil. Okay. And then he says that Yeshua told the Pharisees, you are of the father, the devil. So then he makes us all out to be of the devil, and he completely ignorant of the scriptures. But you see, this is what you get in the church world. There's tens of millions of people like this. Tens of millions. There's no shortage of them. And they hate us. And they think that we're imposter Jews. I don't know. Maybe they were looking for a scripture where the Lord says, as we approach the year of redemption, I will kill all the synagogue of Satan in Israel. I mean, where do you get these? And then the real Israelites will be there. You never get this. This are the real Israelites. But 2/3 get cut off because of their despicable practices. Okay. Now, you have to bear in mind that when Elijah was working openly with training the Levites, and there's probably a temple here, the people in Israel, the 2/3, are going to have a chance to accept the truth about who Yeshua is and the New Testament and the Old Testament and serve Jehovah, and I expect many will. It says there's tons of people serving Jehovah in Jerusalem before Zechariah 12:6. So, 1/3 make it, 2/3 don't. But God's going to give them a chance, just like he did when Yeshua was on earth, to see signs and wonders and miracle and hear correct doctrine. Not the church talking about we're going to go up and wave bye-bye and nonsense like that. But the real truth. With signs following the preaching of the correct word. That's what's going to happen. And they're going to have a chance. And a lot of them are going to turn against Elijah and Apostle John and the temple and everything. They're going to be against it. And they defile the temple. They bring the uncircumcised in heart and flesh in to ridicule it, So God gives them a chance, and this chance goes both ways. One way, they can repent and see the truth with signs and wonders and say, oh my gosh, On the other side of the fence, they could say, the devil's been good to me. I love the demons. Let's kill them and get rid of them. Let's defile the temple and it'll be useless. And, things like this. That's the way they go. So they'll have a chance, and then they get burned up in Malachi 4. You read this in Malachi 3 and Malachi 4. You don't read it in the church because they ignore it. But that's what's going to happen. They're not going to have a really long period of time to repent, but enough to see enough things. The world is probably going to see this. Now, the internet may be up and may be down, I don't know for sure. But the world knew what Yeshua did, you know, I mean, it's going to spread around. So you got to bear that in mind. You also have to bear in mind that Hosea 6, 1 and 2 has to be fulfilled. And this is going to tie in with healing, as I'm going to show you. But we'll go to Hosea 6, 1 and 2. Many of you know it by heart. Others don't. Come and let us return unto Jehovah. So this is Israel, not the church. They're not going to teach that they need to return to Jehovah. They need to come to Jehovah. They were never there in the first place. For he hath torn, and he will heal us. Okay? That's your healing. The word is 7495, Raphe, and that is like a word for a doctor. It means healing. It's what it means. It's accurate. He had smitten, and he will bind us up, bandage us up, you know, fix up wounds, stuff like that. After 2 days will he, chaya, bring us to life. Well, that's the everlasting life when he appears in the clouds. Read Zechariah 12:10, read Revelation 1:7, read John 6:40, read 1 John 3:2. So maybe I should read them with you in Matthew 24:30. So after 2 days will he revive us. In the third day, that's the millennium, he will raise us up. He will stand us up, and we shall live in his sight. Well, in the third day, the millennium, Yeshua is in New Jerusalem, not in heaven. So when we live in his sight, we're not up in heaven with the phony rapture theories. There is a rapture, but it's on the last day. Yeshua told us 4 times. John 6:39, John 6:40, John 6:44, John 6:54. 4 times he said, everybody gets raised up at the same time the last day. So there is no left behind rapture. It doesn't exist. There's no pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. It's fiction. Okay? There's no white throne judgment and other judgments. There's one judgment. Well, there's a judgment for rewards in New Jerusalem, but the punishment judgment comes after the world's destroyed. And we go up in the clouds to heaven, along with the dead coming out of their graves. And that's your rapture. The last day. There are no more days. You know. So, you know, they're just absurd. So if I'm going to make this point, okay, so the 2 days, Peter said 1,000 years is like a day. I'm sorry, a day is like 1,000 years unto the Lord, and 1,000 years like a day. So 2 days is 2,000 years. But because he says 2 days, I don't think it's a precision to the day 2,000 years. It's kind of roughly, because he doesn't want us to know the exact day or the hour or anything like that. So that's why I think it's that. So Israel is in this punishment. Another place it says it's several places, God has closed their eyes and stopped up their ears, lest they turn to him and be healed. So the gospel is hidden from them by Jehovah. And the churches keep kicking against the Jews like this character just did, right? And they won't repent. Well, the church won't repent either. They have denominations. They have variants. They got another gospel. They got another Jesus. They've changed the Sabbath day. They say the law is dead. And they're the ones that aren't repenting. The Jews are going to come around when the time comes, when that day comes, the day of redemption. Okay? And I'll prove you that in the scriptures. And some of you may accept this, and a lot of you will just go away and go back to following your ostrich study Bible where you stick your head in the ground and you start ignoring scriptures. Okay. Um, where do I go? Okay, so let's start with Matthew 24:30. Now, the church has you believe that this is all one of their left behind raptures, which is a non existent phenomenon. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. The sign of the Son of Man is not him returning to earth, it's a miraculous appearing that's a sign in heaven. So he's not on earth. And then shall all the tribes of, it doesn't say the earth, it's the land of Israel mourn, and that's found in detail in Zechariah 12:10, 12:11. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, this is, well, then when you read the next verse, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven and the other. Well, that's your Matthew 13, the tares and the wheat, where he says, don't pluck up the tares because you might uproot the wheat with them. The angels will come and do it. So the angels get rid of the tares, bind them in bundles to be burned in the fire, which is the lake of fire. But they go to the pit first. And he gathers the wheat into his barn, and the barn is Israel. And that's what this is telling you. Foreign to the church. Okay. Let's go deeper. Let's go to 1 John 3. 1 John 3:2. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, that's appear, not return to earth with New Jerusalem. When he comes to earth, the beast and the false prophet get thrown alive in the lake of fire, and Satan goes into the pit for 1,000 years. Have you seen the beast and the false prophet around lately? How about the talking statue? How about people taking the mark, and if they don't take it, they're getting their head cut off? No, he's not here. Shall appear, we shall be like him. We shall be like Yeshua, for we shall see him like he is. They don't have any explanation for that other than to shift it to a false rapture theory. Now, let's see where this occurs in Zechariah 12:10. There's a siege against Jerusalem and Judah. And the two witnesses burn all these enemies up in the siege. And that reads in Zechariah 12:6. In that day, that's the day of vengeance, will I make the governors, that really should say judges, judges of prophets, two witnesses of prophets. That's, Elijah and Apostle John. The judges of Judah, that's the land we have now, like an earth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left, and Jerusalem shall remain still inhabited in her own place. They got the wording wrong on that one. Okay? And that hasn't happened, and it's not the IDF forces. Some lying false teachers trying to tell the people that's the IDF burning them up with bombs. That's blowing them up. Okay, then you get into Zechariah 12:10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication. So now it would be fair to say they're believers. He poured his spirit out on them. Their eyes are no longer closed, and their ears are not stopped up, and the veil has been removed. They'll know who Yeshua is, and we'll keep reading. And they shall look upon me, that's Yeshua, the Word made flesh, whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem. Okay, now that never happened when they killed Yeshua like 2,000 years ago. This is the day of vengeance. The day of vengeance is the last day of your recompenses, the year of recompenses, and the first day of your redemption. And what happens when they're believers because he poured the Spirit out on them and they see Yeshua? Does the Bible tell us what happens there? It does. Does the church tell you? No. Do they know about it? Of course they do. They're not going to tell you. John 6:40, and this is the will of him that sent me. This is Jehovah's will, that everyone which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. Everlasting life comes immediately when you see him. Now, does everybody see him? Yeah, he comes like lightning. He appears like lightning from the east to the west. So you read this type of thing in Revelation 1:7. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. That's Zechariah 12:10. And all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. Now, it's kindreds, it's probably really saying, let's see if we can break this down. The Greek is so screwed up. The word means a tribe. So the kindred word means tribe. So it's saying tribes of the earth means the land of Israel shall wail. Now, wail is mourning. That's how they mourn. So there you have it. It's Zechariah 12:10. Now, they lay siege in Zechariah 12:10. You got to watch this now. I'm putting current events and prophecy together for you. Don't worry, I got your back in terms of you knowing what's going to happen if you want to believe your Bible. If you don't want to believe your Bible, notice I'm just using scriptures. If you don't want to believe your Bible, well, I can't help you. They went out from among you because they were not of you. How can two walk together unless they be agreed? If you reject knowledge, I will reject you. Knowledge is the Bible. What do you think the Bible is? Fairy tales? It's knowledge. Knowledge shall be increased. That's the true gospel instead of the crap they've been teaching for 2,000. Well, there was no church in existence for 350 years, approximately, after Yeshua rose from the dead. So you got to put that in your pipe and smoke it. 350 years, there was no church. The church is an illusion. It's a deception of Satan. It's not correct. It started as Catholics with Inquisition. Come on, it's nonsense. They're still the same way. The Reformation was done by the Catholics. That's all it is. I've gone back through these translations, going back to the 1300s, the English translations. These translators don't really translate anything. The 1300s, 14s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, it's the same junk. They all say the same thing. The same errors are transferred over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They come up with the same exact errors. It's a joke. Satan throws so many translations at you, all say the same thing. You start to believe the lies. And there's so many churches with big buildings and $5,000-$10,000 a month electric bills to run the air conditioning and the heating. saying the same crap with minor differences, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, all wrong. And they got different doctrinal statements, and they all say, well, they all changed the Sabbath, or 99% or 98% of them changed it to Sunday. You can't change the Sabbath. It's celebratory or a holy day because that's the day Jehovah rested after he made the creation in 6 days. So how could you change it? That date when he rested is not movable. You can't change the Sabbath to Sunday. The tip of my finger is Jerusalem, which is going to be in the siege, which is surrounded. That's not an attack or invasion. It's a surrounding, like a boycott sort of thing. That's the tip of the finger. This is the West Bank, which wraps around Jerusalem on the north, the south, and the east. So this West Bank thing is going to be a problem. And they are going to surround Jerusalem with the West Bank. The only way you could surround or lay siege to Jerusalem is with the West Bank. Okay? Period. You can look at a map. It's inescapable. The West Bank includes East Jerusalem, which is the site of the Dome of the Rock, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and also the true site of where the temple goes. So the trouble that we're having in the West Bank now tells me how close we are, because this is necessary for prophecy. Of course, you can't surround Jerusalem without having the West Bank. And I can go back into Zechariah 12 and read that to you in detail, which I will do. Verse 2, behold, I'll read verse 1. The burden of the word of Jehovah for Israel, Jehovah which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundations of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now let's study the word siege, 4692 mitzor in Hebrew. We'll see what, studying Brown, Driver, and Briggs, which are not bad, it says an enclosure, a seed, an entrenchment. Okay? It could also be siege works, which they would do against like a castle or a walled city. How does Strong's Strong says hemming in. Fenced fortress. Okay, so it's pretty much a surrounding. Stop goods from going out, stops people from going out, stops goods and people from coming in. Okay? Like when China surrounds Taiwan lots of times to scare them with Navy ships and airplanes flying over. They don't invade Taiwan, they do a siege, but they break it off after a few hours, When they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Judah's the land we have now, basically. We don't have all of it, but basically. God doesn't call us Israel until the tribes, the lost tribes, the 10 tribes, which is Israel, come home. The other 2 tribes is Judah, which is Judah and Levi. In that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth, it doesn't say that, it says the goyim, the heathens of the land, be gathered together against it. Now, that could be those in the West Bank. I'm sure it's considering those heathens as well. I believe as Gaza, Lebanon, probably Jordan, It could be Iraq. These kind of people that are around us where they've been fighting with us, notice the way things unraveled here. The wars stopped, except in the West Bank. But the Hamas terrorists are still there. The Hezbollah terrorists are still there. Okay? They got rid of one set of terrorists in Syria, but they replaced it with another set of terrorists, the Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists that run the place now, with a new paint job, you know. And Iraq has still got the same terrorists. Okay. They get cut in pieces, though all the heathen of the land be gathered together against it. In that day, saith Jehovah, I will smite every horse with astonishment. Now, a horse is the word sus. It could mean a swallow, which is a bird, a white bird, I believe, that flies, or it can mean a horse. So it could actually be referencing aircraft, drones, and military vehicles. I will smite every sus or horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness. And I will open my eyes upon the house of Judah. That's a very good thing. That means we just slid into home plate, okay? And when you're sliding, you're going to get dirty, and your uniform will get ripped, and stuff like that, I think. And will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the judges of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength. The strength of the inhabitants of Jerusalem is in Jehovah of hosts, their God. Okay? The Jews today won't even say the name Jehovah. They refer to him as Hashem, the name. So something happened in Jerusalem. Okay? In that day, that's the day of vengeance, we're in recompenses now. That's why you see Gaza's Iraq, southern Lebanon's Iraq, the bad ones in Syria got the boot, you know, the Houthis keep getting bombed and stuff like that, all right? But it's leaving the bad ones still there to rise up for the siege. What's going to provoke the siege? Elijah with signs and wonders in the temple, and he's training the Levites, and they're going to freak out. And in the Muslim theology, they're waiting for a character called the Dajjal, which is a false messiah that will succor Israel in and encourage Israel to kill all the Muslims. Well, Zechariah 12:10, it's not some plot, you know. Anyway, in that day will I make the judges of Judah like an earth of fire among the wood, like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour, it's better stated, burn up all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left, and Jerusalem shall remain still inhabited in her own place. So who do you know has fire coming out of their mouth? Why is it so hard to figure this out? Jehovah also shall save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall Jehovah defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them in that day shall be as David. Well, this is weird, isn't it? Feeble people, bent over, old people, canes, walkers, stumbling, staggering, bent over, are like David. David killed Goliath. Oh, he killed a bear, he killed a lion. And he was a great warrior. That's the old feeble people. Let's keep reading. And the house of David shall be as Elohim, as the angel of the Lord before them. That's Michael, the angel that God put his name in. That was with Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And he killed 140,000 people in one day. So we will be taking the land back when Yeshua appears in the clouds, and we get this everlasting life, which doesn't mean you're immortal, you could still die. But it means more like before the flood, people lived 900 some years. You'll live even longer because you get a double portion, but you don't need to live that long. You just got to live till the end of the second 70, which begins when Yeshua appears, and it's over when he returns to earth. The sign of him coming to appear the first time is the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood. 70 years later, based on Daniel 9:24, which really says 270s, not 70 weeks. In every single Hebrew manuscript, it says Shavim, 270s. The first 70 was Babylonian captivity, so we know it's a 70-year period. So this 70, at the end of it, what happens is the sun goes dark and the moon goes dark, not the blood, and the stars fall and fail to give their light. And that's when Yeshua is going to return to earth as per Revelation 19, riding on a white horse with the garment stained red, with millions of angels coming from hell. Or maybe it's not a million millions, maybe it's 900,000, or maybe it's 750,000, or maybe it's 4.5 million. I don't know. Come on white horses, with him. That's not him appearing in the clouds, seated at the right hand of God the Father. Why is he at the right hand of God the Father? Because in Psalms 110:1 it says, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool," which has not yet happened, obviously. When that is over is when Yeshua comes down to earth. Because then the beast and the false prophet are flipped into the lake of fire alive, and Satan goes to the pit for 1,000 years. Okay? This is the true gospel. So far away from what the church teaches. Now I'm in verse 9. "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the heathens that come against Israel, Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication." So now they're saved. "And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn." They look upon Yeshua in the clouds. Now every eye will see him, but only those that are believers are going to receive the eternal life, the everlasting life, I should have said. Now, if you're around the world, not in Israel, and you're a true believer in Yeshua, and, to the point where Yeshua would say, "I knew you," not "I didn't know you," then you too are going to have this everlasting life, wherever you are, and then you're going to come to Israel in the next great Exodus. So, that's the true gospel, and that could be happening this coming week, or, any day now. We're that close. So this war building up in the West Bank is another sign of how close we are, but it's not immediate because we yet have to see Elijah work. And as I've been saying, when Elijah's working, training the Levites, I believe that we're going to have this ceasefire time, where missiles, drones, rockets, bullets, mortars, all that junk isn't going to be coming in. Because how could they be working if this is coming in? Or what if it hit the temple and stuff like that? So this is a period of that happening, and also the testing of the Israelites to see which way they want to go. And sadly, we know the end. 2/3 aren't going to make it. Now, of the 2/3 could also be the Arabs living in Israel, although some of them are likely Israelites and don't know it. Over the centuries, there was a lot of forced conversions into Islam, and over the generations, they lost touch, cognition of who they were. So this is another really good sign of how things are moving. Okay? God is trying to be merciful to those that are going to get cut off. Because when they get cut off, they go to the pit, and then they go to judgment, then they go to the lake of fire. But they don't stay in the lake of fire for 1,000 years. They don't stay for 100,000 years. They don't stay for 1,000,000 years. They don't stay for 1,000,000,000 years. They don't stay for 1,000,000,000,000 years. They stay for an unmeasurable period of time that's, I would say, infinite. It never ends. You have to understand how horrible that is. But they're enemies of God. They can't climb up to heaven and kill God. The angels tried that, basically, and a third of them got thrown out. Then down on earth, the Tower of Babel was probably some moronic episode where they thought they could climb up to heaven and overthrow heaven, some nonsense like that. So what do? They go after Israel. They go after his people to hurt him, to not let him run the nation, run the world through Israel, serving him, of course. That's what they do. So they're so evil. This is what happens. God has no use for them. You can't put them in heaven. Look what happened with the angels. They had immortality. They were spiritual beings, ministering spirits. And they rebelled. So you can't take these people and convert them to a spiritual being and put them up in heaven. They'll just revolt again. So God is purging the dross out of the people. And if the people refuse to let the dross go out of them, they want to stay impure, there's no place for them up there. Because it'll just be a repetition of what happened with the angels. The angels were tested. God knew they couldn't overthrow him. Satan became their leader and got a third of them, and there's apparently millions of them up there, I believe, to turn against God, and then they got thrown down to earth, which is no fun for them. They don't have their powers like they used to. They don't have their appearance. They don't have the luxuries. They don't have the peace, and they don't have nothing. They're just waiting to go to the lake of fire. But they are used of God to test the people that he wants to test. Basically, this earth is a testing place. That's why it's all burned up at the end. There's no need anymore. The elect are redeemed. They give them a spiritual body. They go up to heaven for eternity, forever. They never leave. So you're there for not 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000,000 years. You're there for an infinite period of time that cannot be measured by us. Okay? And the same for those in the lake of fire. But they're in misery, and you're in luxury or paradise that's beyond our imaginations, I believe. It's that good we can't imagine it. And you're not going to be bored. You're not going to be sitting there saying, well, what do we do today? No, God's not that way. You'll be very happy up there. You'll have no enemies. You think there's going to be locks on the doors and the windows? There won't be. What from who? From who? Who are you going to lock out? Who's going to come in your house and violate you and steal things or hurt you? We in our flesh body can't really grasp how good it is. We really cannot. Can you try? Of course. Can you ask God to give you insights? Sure. I think the insights, look, when we hit, this is how I see it, and I'm probably right. When we hit everlasting life and we start, rebuilding Israel, and the Exodus comes and we're running the nations and everything's nice here, God is going to give us a lot of revelations about the great falling away that'll happen 70 years after. He may not do it immediately, but as the years roll on, we'll get more and more insights into that. Okay? And then after that, as that approaches, we're also going to get more and more insights about New Jerusalem and life there. Because he's going to have to, knowing him, I believe he'll prepare us to some decent extent above and beyond the information we have now by far, I think, about life in New Jerusalem, so we'll know what to expect when we walk in through one of the 12 gates, each gate named after one of the tribes of Israel, and we go in the appropriate gate, and we stay there for the end of the millennium plus until we go up to heaven. So when we're in New Jerusalem, I am rather certain, probably maybe at the beginning of it, or maybe in the middle or the end, at some point, Yeshua and the glory of God of Israel, Michael, are going to teach us. They're both there enthroned, by the way, and they're going to teach us about heaven. But, you know, people want to learn about heaven now, and they're not going to understand Zechariah 12 and the everlasting life, and they're not going to understand all this stuff. So he's going to lay it on us as we go. So we'll be able to have a good understanding of what's coming up upon us next, rather than throw it out into the future a long time and keep us ill-prepared or unprepared for what's coming up next. You understand? That's not hard to understand. So we got to take things as they come, okay? So I don't spend the tremendous amount of time on Gog and Magog in New Jerusalem, but as you notice, I spend a whole lot of time on the everlasting life in Zechariah 12 and Jeremiah 30:11 and Jeremiah 46:28, which is almost the same, and all of these type of things. The temple, the law, Elijah, Apostle John. These are the things that we need to know for the immediate, very fast coming future. Okay? Makes sense? What good would it be if I was going to sit here and teach all about New Jerusalem and not talk about Zechariah 12 or Gog and Magog, the great day of the Lord? You know, you would be very ill prepared. It would be a mess. Okay? So this so-called war in the West Bank is a sign of it coming. And I think you see it. Let's look at the chat. Now, as I said, the church doesn't know from what I'm talking about, which is sad, but they can go through my videos in the live section on my YouTube channel. And there's lots of good Bible studies there. Okay. So let me get back on my notes. There's still some things we need to cover. Taiwan had 2 of their internet type cables cut, and the likely suspect leads me to mention chicken chow mein and vegetable egg rolls. China. And we may see all the internet cables cut before Elijah emerges, or we may not. I don't know. If you look, search the internet for search the Bible for internet cables, you're going to draw a blank. This is interesting, good news. I guess it's good news. The HTS, the new government in Syria, canceled the lease that the Russian government had on their Navy base in Latakia on the Mediterranean, and I assume their air base, which was a long walk away. It wasn't far away. So Russia's out in left field. Trump, curiously, is now talking like this with Russia. If Russia doesn't do a ceasefire with Ukraine, we're going to put more sanctions on Russia. And I'm going to consider giving more weapons to Ukraine. Gee, have we seen this before? So is Trump really changing things? Yeah, in a way. Not a lot, though. I expect Trump would give Ukraine longer range weapons, probably threaten Putin with that. Look, Putin's not doing so well. Biden told the truth about that. Putin's doing pretty bad. Ukraine's taking a lot of damage. Trump said Russia lost 1 million men. That's huge. You know how big that is? That's huge. And Ukraine lost about almost 1 million, I think 750, 800,000 in that range, someplace. I think 800,000. 800,000's a lot. Trump in Saudi Arabia, remember when he was in his first term, he did the sword dance with the Saudis? Well, they liked Donald. So they said they're going to invest 500 billion with a B, not an M, a B, in America, I think in infrastructure, to make the Donald their friend. The Saudis are no longer talking about needing a Palestinian state to do an Abraham Accord or normalize relations with Israel. So that looks like it's going to go down. And I'm sure they're going to stop selling oil and natural gas without accepting dollars and euros. That'll stop. It may already have, I don't know. But he'll stop it. Trump will play up to him. Trump will have him to the White House, Mar-a-Lago, whatever, you know, they'll do whatever they're going to do. I don't know. But the only advantage it helps Israel is then Israel Airlines could fly over Saudi airspace and get places quicker and easier. But I could care less if we have a ceasefire with Saudi. I wouldn't. I'm not a ceasefire. The Abrahamic Accords, we're not supposed to have treaties with the surrounding nations according to the Old Testament in the old days. And it doesn't say for all your generations, but I would think it's a bad idea based on the old scripture, the Old Testament. So Trump killed DEI and affirmative action. I told you that in most of the government, or I think in all the federal government, and that's going to cause blowback for Trump. The gun control, unless Trump breaks his word, is going to create blowback. A lot of it. Trump and the cartels. You got to listen to this. Trump says things that are dumb. Like he said, Mexico, make Mexico a state. Well, he stopped talking about that. That was dumb. You can't do that. So now he's saying we'll send the military, implications, special forces to get the cartels in Mexico, which he just declared as terrorists. So now he's saying we're going to send the military into Mexico to kill the terrorists. Yeah, okay, and what's Mexico going to say? Yeah, Trump, we think that's a good idea and we thank you. No, for many decades, the cartels have controlled the governments of Mexico. They get their man in office. They got, you know, they can throw a few $1 billion into an election if they want to. So let's talk about how is Trump going to get the cartels in Mexico? Well, they probably have buildings, hangouts, centers, training facilities, and things like this. So, okay, so you fly drones. You find them, you have a drone blow them up, or a plane fly in and blow them up, or least likely would be a bunch of special forces guys sneak up and raid them and shoot them up, but that'd be unlikely. Okay, so what is that? Well, you're basically doing targeted assassinations. If you start dropping, 500-pound bombs all over where they are, you're going to kill a lot of civilians, damage a lot of property. Mexico's going to go nuts, right? Which Trump may not care about. He said, they'll say, if you can't take care of your own terrorists, we will, because we're suffering the wrath of your terrorists, you nincompoops. But you got to understand, the government is the cartels, basically. So they're going to kick against any measures against the cartels. Okay? What do you think the president of Mexico walks out with when his term is over? $500 million, a billion, 3 billion, who the heck knows? It's a fortune. Put it in Mexico banks. Who's going to do anything about it? Nobody. Here's the problem. The cartels probably have not tens of thousands of people in the United States, hundreds of thousands, or at least 100,000. There are many different cartel operators in different geographical locations. So cartel ABC could have people in 30 or 80 cities in the United States. Then cartel, XYZ has people in another 50 or 80 or 100 cities in America. So, you add it all up, you're going to have at least hundreds of thousands of cartel operators. Now, they've got to defend their turf against other cartels pushing them out for drug sales and the other things they do, which is probably drugs, weapons, counterfeiting, credit card fraud, I don't know, fencing, I don't know what they do. But big time probably is drugs and weapons, okay? So the cartel, if you're in a cartel, you've got to do what the cartel tells you to do. Okay? If you don't, when they bring you into the cartel, they find out all about your family. They probably have pictures of your family, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, grandparents, your children, your spouse, grandchildren, whatever. Right? And if you don't listen and you decide to run away, they would probably have a hard time finding you, and it may take years, and you may never get found, because you could go out of there with a few $1,000,000. But, and if you planned it well, you wouldn't get found. You could have another identity in another country and have 3 or 4 plastic surgery procedures. Yes, you can disguise yourself. How would you do that? Well, first thing is, if you're, let's say, over 40 or 45 or something like that, you start having plastic surgery to roll the time clock back in. Good surgeons can get the time clock back about 15 years if you do enough surgery. Okay? Now, what's enough surgery? Well, in a male, hair transplant to restore the hairline. You could, of course, dye your hair red or another color, from brown to black or whatever. That would make it more confusing. You can get after your hair transplant, you can get a forehead lift where they cut out a piece of skin over here, and then they pull it back, staple it together, and then it heals, and the scar is covered up by your hair transplant. It would make your eyebrows raise up, but it also would smooth out any wrinkles you had in your forehead, making you look years younger fairly immediately. Okay? And then you can do an eye lift, upper eyelids and lower eyelids, where they cut skin out and they get rid of the baggy eyes and stuff like that. Now, you could have your nose trimmed and make it like a ski slope, which makes it look rather corny. but it would throw people off. Or you could have, if you had a small nose, you could have your nose built up by putting pieces of silicone or cartilage from another part of your body in there and make your nose more prominent. They could also, by using what's called an open rhinoplasty, they could open up the nose inside and shave off pieces of cartilage. They could open these up and move them together. So there's a lot of modifications they could do on the nose. The teeth, you can have caps. You can put veneers in, which is just the front of the teeth, crowns or veneers, and you could make your teeth much wider than they were. Okay, you could make your teeth larger, stuff like that, even smaller. All right, with the chin, they could reduce the chin if you had a witch's chin and push it back. They could put silicone pieces in and bring it forward. They can redo the jawline to set the jaw forward or back, although that's rather radical. And they can put implants in the cheeks and build the cheekbones up. They could probably reduce them if you wanted that and then tighten the skin. Then they could do the neck, take the tension out of the neck. And then if you're older, they can do pretty serious chemical peel if you got the right color skin. You need to have kind of white skin for that, like Swedish or something like that. If you don't have the right color skin, they wouldn't do a chemical implant. Then with the body, basically if you needed liposuction, probably wouldn't put a big emphasis on the body because almost all the time you're going to be wearing clothes. Okay, so if it's a young person that wants to change his looks, they could work on the hairline with hair implants because a lot of young people have bald, they bald back or they got a lot of hair loss, so that's a feature. They can modify the nose. They can modify the cheeks and the chin, and that would, and teeth, and that would throw people off pretty much. You'd be surprised how much. Everything wouldn't add up right anymore, and changing the hair color would be the icing on the cake. That would, if you didn't change the hair color, they would maybe look at you twice. But if you did the hair implants and you had a big full hairline and you changed the color of your hair regularly, that would be pretty much the end of it. Now, if you have exposed tattoos, like over here or someplace where it's easy to see it, like on your neck or something like that, now you've got a bad problem. You got to get them removed, and it's probably going to leave blemish or scar line, and that could be a problem. And then if you replace that tattoo with another tattoo on your neck, they would probably get suspicious about what the heck you were up to, So you would probably need to cover that up with clothing on the neck as best you can. It wouldn't be easy. So that could be a problem. If you have tattoos on the face, oh, that's a real bad one. That's a bad problem. So, on the hands and the knuckles, this too is a bad problem. Tattoos are really hard to get rid of, They can re-tattoo over them and deceive people. So if you had regular arm tattoo and it was a gang thing, you could probably put a much larger tattoo on your arm to cover it up. But you have to be careful which tattoo artist you go to, because he might open up his mouth to get a reward. hey, I got this guy here that's got one of your tattoos for the gang, and he's trying to get me to tattoo over at this area or what? And they'd probably drop $5,000 on the guy for the phone call, you know. So you'd have to be pretty careful how you went and had that done. You might want to go to a doctor who can't talk about it because of patient privacy and wouldn't do it anyway. Wouldn't want any gang involvement, and he destroys your tattoo, and then when it, burning it out, it would take quite a few sessions, maybe 10, and a spaced apart. And then when it's finished burning it out with a laser, and it's not recognizable, then you could go to a tattoo artist and say, well, I had this tattoo about an old girlfriend or whatever, they'll lie, or I had a tattoo I didn't like and I want to get another one because I wanted it off. That wouldn't be lying, and I don't like the blemish, so I'd like to tattoo over it. And they say, yeah, okay, they probably have done this a few times in the past anyway. So, so anyway, they could run around and hide, but I'm digressing. So, Trump tries to destroy them. He's not going to succeed. Okay? He's not going to march 200,000 soldiers with 400 airplanes and 100 helicopters and 97 tanks into Mexico. So they'll run away from him. They'll hide for more. Trump's bet is to build up the wall between Mexico and America. And that wall's going to come down in Jeremiah 50:51. And he already has a wall now, but it's missing a few hundred miles of wall. So he has to finish it, which I think he's probably going to start on rather quickly. Okay. So I don't know what Trump's going to do. Maybe Trump would try to work a deal where he can patrol the border with the military, inside Mexico out 5 miles or something like that. I don't know what that's going to gain, but all right, let me check the chat and then we're going to go on to more Bible stuff. So what I want to talk about is with healing. We pray a lot of times for people and pets to get healing. Now, what I'm telling you doesn't apply directly to the pet, because pets don't know the Bible and right and wrong, but the whole creation groaneth, so they suffer along with us. So pets don't know the Torah and the Bible and right or wrong and the teachings of Yeshua. So, there is a chance God may not heal a pet because he's trying to get your attention or punish you or something like that. But I'm not going to go deep into that at all. So we're talking about people. So we do pray for people to get healed, and typically the ones that get healed are believers for the most part. Vast most part that I'm aware of as I see it. And sometimes we pray and we don't get the healing. So what's going on? Well, bad health or sickness or disease and this kind of thing, or incapacities physically, come from sin. We're all in sin. So it says that if any of you are sick, call for the elders. So the elders are supposed to come to the sick. It's not that the sick show up at church on Sunday and they pray for them. They're supposed to go to the sick, which they normally don't do much. And if he have sins, he confesses his sins. and they pray over him and anoint him with oil, and it says the Lord will raise him up. Well, raise him up could be boom, he just gets up and he's all better. We've all, well, I have known about healings where that happens right away. And then there's other healings where you get raised up over days. So it can vary, right? Okay. Are there any rules as to which is what? None that I'm aware of. So I think it's just up to the Lord how he wants to do it. Now, there are sins of commission and omission. In other words, there are sins of doing something wrong, and there are sins of not doing something you should have done. A classic example of that is Jonah failing to go to Nineveh. And he wound up with the whale for 3 days, okay? Now, after it was over and they repented, the Lord showed him how important it was that he do it, and he didn't want to do it. So the Lord gave him a pretty serious punishment, but delivered him out of it, and kind of saved Jonah into being a good follower of God, right? So he chastens those he loves. He doesn't run around punishing his enemies, the children of the devil. He destroys them when they don't repent, but he doesn't punish them. So they're running around now with their yachts and their private jets and their jewelry and their Ferraris and their beautiful foods and nice houses and all of this garbage and this worthless stuff, but they have no concept of how worthless it is. If we knew what really goes on in heaven and what really will go on in New Jerusalem, the things of this world would be so worthless to us, we wouldn't chase after them. So he keeps us from that knowledge right now, I believe. Okay? I mean, what's the difference if you have a $600,000 Rolls Royce and you have a $24,000 Kia or something like that, and you're both going from Miami to Atlanta? Is one going to get there before the other? No. I don't think so. Is one going to probably be more relaxed and comfortable when they get there than the other? Probably, but it's not a serious difference, you know. It's not that big a deal. Okay? The expensive cars are not really practical devices. They're, you know, like a heater is practical, a convection oven is practical, a refrigerator, a fan, an air conditioner. But a $600,000 car is not exactly practical. It's predominantly designed to show people, look what I have that you don't have, or look what I have, I'm in your club, I'm a Satan bot, you know. That's what it's for. It's not for its use value, okay? It doesn't have that much use value. It really doesn't. Have you ever been in a Rolls Royce? I mean, they're very fast, they're very nimble and agile and maneuverable. They're surprisingly good cars, really. But, you know, they're not that good. I had a Toyota Corolla once in the 70s. It was a great car. I used to drive it from San Francisco to Reno and all around California for work and in the snow up in the mountains and Lake Tahoe, and it was fine. I had a stick shift in it, a little engine. It had really nice bucket seats. It was Nassau blue with a white interior. I enjoyed it. It was a fun car. I didn't have any problems with it. Economical as all get up. The only time I had trouble with that thing was I went to change the oil in one of those oil changes places, and I got a few hundred yards away and I realized I was dripping oil. Somebody told me, I think. So I went back, I turned around and went back and said, hey man, I'm dropping oil. And they got all apologetic, and they went and put the thing in the pit, and they took it out, put another filter in, put more oil in, made sure it didn't leak. They didn't put it in right. So that was the biggest trouble I had with the car. The car was a great car, and it was, I think it was $1,800 in the '70s, and it was small. I put a good radio in it, and I had a nice car. And I've had expensive cars: AMG, Mercedes, Porsche turbos, lots of BMW, M series, convertibles, and all kinds of stuff, Corvettes, and great SUVs and pickups. And, they're not that, you know, they're, when you take a trip, you get a little bit less tired. The seats are usually thicker. You can blow hot air through the seats, air conditioned air through the seats, recline them electricity with electric. They're better in some ways, but they're not that different. You take a 6-hour trip, you're going to be tired. Rolls Royce or no Rolls Royce. So these things are really designed to show people that you have them. Now, a private aircraft is different. That has use value. You go when and where you want. You set your own itinerary. That has tremendous use value. It's very expensive to run. And you can buy old aircraft rather cheap. Maybe even if you go back 6, 8, 10 years, you can get a plane for 10% or 15 or 20% of its new price. But the maintenance is still there, and the operating costs is still there. Yachts are use value. You get your own itinerary, do what you want. So some things have use value. Expensive clothing. Does an $80,000 Chanel purse have any use value? No, you can get a purse for $15 that'll do the job. It's show value. You know, does an expensive ring have any use value? No, it's just show off stuff. It doesn't serve a purpose. What purpose? Nothing. Not a thing. So now the diamond industry has been ruined because you could buy diamonds for a pittance. They make them in China, and they can't even sell these lab-grown diamonds anymore, because the whole diamond market's gone crackpot. You cannot tell the difference between these lab-grown diamonds and natural diamonds anymore, except they put a laser etching inside the artificial diamond to show you it's an artificial diamond. But how many do these Chinese companies make these lab-grown diamonds? You can't tell the difference, and don't put the etching in there and just take them and put them in the regular market. Have somebody set them in a ring and then go sell them on eBay or something like that. And you're not going to know it's a lab-grown diamond. They get it with inclusions and imperfections, and you didn't know it. So what, we're supposed to trust the Chinese artificial diamond makers to be on the honor system and never do this? The whole diamond market is shot. How many of these lab-grown diamonds are out there impersonating real diamonds? We don't know. But I expect it's a lot. So is there any advantage over buying, let's say, a 2-carat diamond ring that's D quality, flawless, for, I don't know, $60,000, or buying one with an artificial lab-grown diamond with the same qualifications, D, flawless, and that kind of thing, and put it in a gold ring for maybe $3,800 total, or $4,500 or something like that. The ring's only a few $100, So, you know what I'm saying? So if you just want to impress people, you're not going to be able to tell that it's got the etching inside it unless you put it under a high optical glass, so people can't tell. So they're running around with what looks like a very expensive diamond. Now, I don't know how they're doing it with rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. I think the artificial versions of those are detectable. Um, so things are really screwed up for the diamond people. But let's take clothing. Guys buy a suit, $15,000 for a suit jacket, and a pair of pants. Is there any use value in that? No. Well, if you have to wear a suit to work, you're probably going to have to drop $200-300 for something. But you don't have to drop 15,000 unless you want to play the game. Look what I can afford, you can't afford. It maybe looks a little different. So if you went and you maybe dropped your money on a $600 or $800 suit, it'd be very difficult to detect the differences between that and a $15,000 suit. I bought some of these suits years ago when I knew the Lord. I was in the world making a lot of money, and I bought them on eBay, unworn, not tailored. Like I got Oxford, which is where Clinton used to buy his clothes. And I bought other high-end suits at a fraction of the price, like a fifth or a tenth even, on eBay. And I went to the local tailor and had them modify it, and that didn't cost much. And then I wore the suit. So is there any really great difference between that or just buying a Hart, Shafter, and Marks suit, which is, I don't know what they cost today, but a good sport jacket was $300 to $600, 20 or so years ago, which would have been the last time approximately I ever bought any of that stuff. They were fine. I didn't have any problem with them. And then there was one step up from Hart, Shafter, and March. I can't remember the name of it right now. It was a higher up, and it was a little bit better material. I bought some of those, but buying the ultimate sport jackets, I bought a couple of them. Suits, or you don't know the difference of these things. What the heck is, it's to have it, They buy a lot of them so they don't have to wear them more than maybe once, twice, 3 times. Then they give them away or throw them away, That might have some use value, having a lot of them, if you're trying to keep up appearances in that world, What about, they buy sunglasses for, Cartier sunglasses could be $1,200, $2,500. Are the lenses any better? No, they're usually crappier. Much crappier. Junky. You could go get some Oakley's or Wiley X and get some really great sunglasses you can get them on eBay. If you look around, a good pair of Oakley's like these and you shop eBay, you can get them for about $50. Do they got lenses that are better than the, like, say, $1,800 Cartier? Oh, the lenses are 10 times better, It doesn't, what does it do? You see, they buy, stupid stuff. They buy $1,200-$1,500 pairs of sneakers. I'm sure $80 or $100 pair of New Balance or Adidas or something like that are going to be much better, last longer, more comfortable, better for your feet. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't, they're all into showing other wealthy people and poor people what they have. That's what the bulk of this is. But a lot of it is real. Having a big house with an indoor pool and an indoor jacuzzi or several, and an outdoor pool and an outdoor jacuzzi. And on the second or third level, having a big patio with an outdoor kitchen. having an outdoor kitchen near the pool, having a big pool, um, having a garden you could sit in and stuff. Does this have use value? Yes, lots of use value. You can hold big events in your 15,000 square foot house. You can walk around your house and impress yourself at how much room you have, and stuff like that. You know, the reality of this is these people are probably going to spend most of their time in a very large house just using, probably a dining room, a place where they watch TV or something, a bedroom and a bathroom, and that's probably mostly 90% of the time that's all they're going to use in their house. But the outside spaces are nice, you know. Yeah, I've lived in big houses when I was working in the Lord, and I was working in. It's so bad if you forget your glasses in one room in the house or your phone, you just about have to call a taxi to go find it. I mean, you forget where your phone is, you're getting ready to go to bed, you want to put the thing in the charger, and all of a sudden you don't know where it is, and you got to start walking around the house at night looking for your phone, and it could take a while. You go in the kitchen, you go in the dining room, you go in your office, you go in your bathroom, you go here, you go there until you find it. It can be a pain in the neck, and then you got to keep the place clean, so you got to have maids, and maids are a pain in the neck. They're good in that you don't have to clean, but they're not good in that you lose your privacy. Okay? I spent years living with servants when I was doing well in the world, knowing the Lord, and I was treating them rather fairly, I thought. I spent years living with them, and sometimes we had 9 servants, counting a gardener, and handyman, and maids, and I had bodyguards because I was in some countries that were barely habitable, and you have a problem, with being around people all the time. You never just you and your wife, you know. So I think one of the reasons the Lord had me live like this is because we're going to be wealthy soon. And I know a whole lot about how to live with servants and how to treat them and things like that. And I'm probably the only one that's had great big houses. I mean, I've had them they've had outbuildings. I had, I guess maybe the biggest one was 8,000 square feet, if that. But if you add up the outbuildings and some, maybe it was not even 8,000, maybe it was 6,000. I don't know, but I could explain to you what it's like to live in these kind of places. I had a hallway in one house you could have put a bowling alley in. I mean that. I think you would have fit a bowling alley in it. It's a long walk. I had a house that had a master bedroom suite where the bedroom was huge. And it had I don't know what you call it, a den room off the main bedroom, which had its own fireplace. Then it had a balcony on it, and then I had a bathroom that was huge. It was the size of a lot of one-bedroom apartments in a complex. The bathroom. It had a bathroom, a bidet, a sink, a shower, a big jacuzzi. I had a refrigerator in there. It had a little balcony. It had skylights. It was huge. Huge. So we had, maids can play all kinds of games with you. They could steal laundry detergent. They could steal perfume. I could explain a lot of things to you, how you deal with them, And you got to be nice and fair and deal with them as a representative of the Lord. But that doesn't mean they run all over you or trample all over you. So my wife likes to cook, so she would cook. So they set the table, and they would help my wife with the cooking, and then we'd cook, and then people would sit down for dinner. We'd serve dinner, and then when dinner's over, they would serve, and then you just walk away, and they clean up. It's kind of nice. It encourages sophisticated cooking. You know, meals over, you just walk away, and they take care of everything. And when you go, before you go to bed, the kitchen's spotless. Everything's finished. It's in the dishwasher, running. Maybe the dishwasher's still running, or they didn't unload the dishwasher. They do that in the morning, and everything's fine. You know, we had live-in servants, maids in one house. We had four, I think, four live-in maids, maybe three. They varied between 3 and 4. You know, you have these big houses have multiple bathrooms you got to clean every day, bedrooms, hallways, windows. You got to keep the outside, the grounds clean. I mean, then you got to do the cooking and keep up with the kitchen. And they would feed the dogs. We had several dogs, and the dogs would eat typically raw food. And it was, you know, you could send them shopping, or what we would usually do is take them shopping with us, 1 or 2. So you go to an open air market, you know, fresh fruits and meat and things like that, and they could shuttle the stuff back to the car, and we'd have a driver/bodyguard at the car who'd watch it. Yeah, all this kind of stuff. It's weird. It's weird. And having a lot of money is weird too, because you got to be careful. You could ruin people with money easily. So anyway, let's talk about sins. So people are not getting healed. And a lot of times, if the prayer requests keep coming in, I tell them, for the same thing, I tell them to search the Lord as to what they're doing wrong that might be interfering. Now, sometimes there's nothing, and I'll explain that. But sometimes there is. And there's a sin of commission, or things you did, like what could it be? It could be a lie. It could be anger. It could be aggression. It could be deceiving a person. It could be conducting business in not the best way you can do, not straight up, forward, and honest. It could be many things, but it could also be omission. You're not doing something you're supposed to do. How are you treating your family? How about your neighbors, your employer? Are you dealing fair with your employer? How about your co-workers? How about your neighbors? I said that. How about other people in your lives? How are you dealing with them? Okay? You got to be careful about that stuff. The Good Samaritan saw the guy, and he paid for his hotel bill after he patched him up to help him recover and all that stuff, right? That was a good deed, a work that he did, okay? But Jonah did an omission. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. So maybe there's a behavior that you're not performing, or something you're supposed to do and you're not doing it, and that's why there's no healing. So you've got to look at it both ways, not just as something I did. What didn't I do that I should have done? Or maybe you did something and you didn't do it to its fullness. You just tokenism did something. You didn't really try hard. Now, some of you have to understand that this could also bear on spiritual warfare against you. But for that to work, you have to give place to the devil. If you're just not in any sins and you're walking right with the Lord and they do spiritual warfare and you, I doubt anything's going to happen. Okay? They got to get you into sin before they're really going to be able to do something to you. But let's talk about friends and family and neighbors and employers and co-workers and other people in your life that are not believers. Well, when you're not a believer, you're in sin all the time because you're calling God a liar. No, I'm not going to believe in the Bible. I'm not going to follow the Bible. I don't have to pay attention to the law. I don't have to pay attention to the teachings of Yeshua. I don't have to, yeah, okay. That's calling God a liar, and you're in sin, and then the unclean spirits could habit you because you're giving place to the devil all the time. Added to this, they're probably lying, cheating, deceiving, immoral sex behavior, immoral or bad drugs, and getting high medicines or street drugs, many things they're doing. So they're giving place to the devil. So the devil or the unclean spirits want to get at you, so they're going to look for the weak link in the chain, which could be your spouse, male or female, doesn't matter if they're not walking with the Lord, or your kids, or your parents, or your grandparents, or your aunt, uncles, and cousins, or other people that are in the family that live in the house with you, or your neighbors start tormenting you with loud music, parties, or whatever, right? Or your co-workers start making life hard for you on the job, or your employer starts making life hard for you. Usually they look for the spouse. If the spouse is not walking right with the Lord, they're going to use the spouse against you. Be it a male or a female, it's not going to matter. By putting witchcraft, sorcery, spells, enchantments on the spouse, making the spouse acutely aware of any shortcomings you might have, be they real or not real. They'll impart to them that you are a dirty dog. No offense, Chief. And then they'll encourage the person to lash out against you and cause you disruptions in your life, which could be blasting music, parking in a driveway. It could be a million things, okay? You know, depending on who it is and what they are in your life. You know, a neighbor's not much in your life, but they can make you miserable. All right? Now, you could not, maybe you're not even committing sins of omission or commission, because this is just causing your relationships to get frayed, and they have access to the people you have relationships for because they're not believers. If all your friends and family were believers, they wouldn't have access normally. Unless they're walking incorrectly, they wouldn't have access. Okay? The other thing is this. Until the 2,000 years is up, the whole creation is going to groan, including you and me and everybody, okay? Sometimes we have these things lifted by prayer and it works. Sometimes it doesn't. If God healed all of us instantly when we prayed for the sick, it wouldn't take a while and people would realize that, hey, these believers in Yeshua pray for you, boom, whatever it is, it gets better. A bad hip, a bad knee, a bad elbow, a shoulder, headaches, a flu, cancer, broken bones, whatever it is. So then people would flock to us for the signs and wonders, particularly the healing. And, you know, this would probably happen with the Israelites, probably especially because they were aware of this from the scriptures. And they would see these signs and wonders. Then a lot of them would turn to Yeshua. And what would happen is the 2,000-year punishment of large wouldn't be there anymore, because they would turn to him and be healed, And God is quite determined to see his word be fulfilled, of course, and that means the 2,000-year punishment, or the 2 days. 1,000 days is like a day, or 1,000 years is like a day, or a day like 1,000 years. So that would mess the plan of salvation up. Yeah. In the middle of this, though, there is a remnant, and God does treat the remnant this way with the healing. But we don't always get healed of everything. So many of us have a thing or things wrong with us, and it just doesn't get healed. Now, I have asked the Lord to show me ways that I could get this problem fixed without you healing me. And that's another option you have. I don't know where he'd lead you, but I would usually emphasize natural remedies, not going to the doctors. But that's up to you. People do go to the doctors and symptoms go away and stuff like that. There's a lot of medical things where you think that people live longer. Once, before they had TV, there was a guy who made a movie of a famous radio announcer. I believe it was during World War II. And they filmed it as a movie in the radio studio, and they were interviewing people in the audience. And there was a lot of people there that were well in their 80s. And they were kicking around pretty fine. A lot of them had glasses. They probably had teeth issues, I guess. I don't know for sure. But they were alert. They didn't have dementia. They were fine. They were sitting at the table. Yeah, they were a little slow. They weren't running around like a 20-year-old or anything, but they were doing fine. And I saw another video of people that were Civil War survivors, shot many, many years ago. It was a very scratchy video. I think it was shot in the 20s, maybe the 30s or the 40s even. And some of these guys were in their 90s, and they had hearing problems and other problems, and they needed to sit down a lot. And, some were in their 80s and 90s, and they were doing pretty good. So I would say that it seems to me that going back almost 100 years, people were living pretty long. Now, they had surgery, but nowhere near what they have today. And they had very little with medicine, nowhere near what they had today. Okay? But people were eating basically organic. They didn't have all these sprays, pesticides, and other junk. They weren't doing GMO and all that. And people were not eating TV dinners, and they didn't have frozen foods until after World War II. Probably around 1950, 48, 49, they started with frozen food. They had canned foods. Going back a long time, they had canned food. But people were predominantly eating fresh foods. They drank alcohol, they had coffee and tea, they ate candy and cake and pastry, they had all that stuff, and they were still kicking around. But what was missing is they didn't have all these chemicals in the food, and they weren't giving the animals steroids and antibiotics and stuff like that. I mean, I guess, well, they didn't have antibiotics. They couldn't have been giving them. And the steroids didn't really, they really couldn't do much with steroids till I think the 40s or the 30s or the 40s. They weren't doing steroids in the animals. The animals were more or less free range, They weren't locking them up in stalls and stuff like that. You know, chickens were running around pecking the bugs, eating the bugs all day. Chickens love to walk around and eat bugs all day. They love it to death. I don't know. The bugs are caviar to them. So yeah, it's hard to find evidence of this, but if I dug for it years ago, and yeah, there were plenty of people well in their 80s that really didn't look bad at all. Now there are people that are going to die younger and stuff like that, but I don't think the diseases that we dread today were that prevalent back then. Okay, not that many people wore glasses. They didn't have any TV, they didn't have any internet, they had a motion picture stuff, but you know how many people saw a motion picture and then how many times a year would they go, so that wasn't bearing down on their vision. They were listening to the radio, you know. There weren't that many cars, I don't think there was that much smog. There wasn't that many radio type signals in the air. They weren't running radar. They weren't broadcasting all kinds of radio stations. They had some. They weren't broadcasting TV and radio and wireless and internet and all that. So there was a lot less of that going on, whatever that's supposed to do. They didn't have these great big electrical towers all over the place back then. And the electric lights were a different genre than what they're giving us for light bulbs today. They used to be that way until maybe, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years ago or something like that. And the people didn't have these artificial medicines. And people did, contrary to what most people are aware of, they used regular plant-based healing herbs, flowers, medicine was used back then more than we were aware of, you know. That's what they had. They didn't have antibiotics, for instance, you know. They didn't have all these things. So they used other things that were around for a long time. They had chiropractors running around. They called them bone crackers, whatever good they were doing. I don't know how good they are. I mean, I've gone to them many times. They relieve pain and stuff. They make you feel better. Does it really help with disease and stuff? Who knows? I don't know. They make you feel better, though, that's for sure. So, yeah, people lived a long time back then like they do today with all these modern things, but, you know, I think eating clean and staying away from GMO and all that, and a good balanced diet is real important, you know. So their foods were much more natural and not tampered with or treated with different chemicals, and that probably makes a big difference. And a crazy thing back then, even though half of America smoked, they still lived a long time. I guess the chemicals weren't in the tobacco products like they are today, but they also drank alcohol. Maybe the alcohol was more natural than it is today. And the concept of going to a health club and all that, that stuff existed. They called it physical culture, but it wasn't anywhere near as popular as it is today. And people becoming joggers and runners and stuff was not common like today. And having treadmills, they didn't exist. They didn't exist. But people were all different. You see, they didn't sit in the house and watch TV, watch cable, watch the internet. They interacted with people. That's even how I grew up as a child. They were, you know, we interacted with people. You know, you had friends, you played games, you played ball, you were outside, you were inside, you were around people, you didn't just sit around. You know, it was really different, way different. So, anyway, you got to be mindful of um, omission sins. Okay. And then there's commission. Now, there's things you could do. You could be argumentative or dictatorial in your household to children and alienate the children, or to a spouse, a woman or a man. It could go both ways. You've got to watch that. The man should be the head of the house. That's the scriptures. And the woman should let him be the man of the house. And if he makes bad decisions and she submits, then the Lord will correct. But if he makes bad decisions and she punishes, then the Lord will correct her, I think. That's It's going to vary depending on all the circumstances. There's no ironclad rules for this, but you got to be careful about the family, and you got to be careful with the neighbors and the co-workers and the employers and business contacts. You got to be careful all the time. Okay? You can't deny the Lord, but you don't want to cram things down people's throats. Okay? You got to watch that too. Okay? Of course, you could repel people by trying to cram down their throats. So, old age is something that God put in that I think is part of a curse. After they didn't have old age before the flood, like we know it today. I guess they got old, but they would live 800, 900 years or something like that. They didn't make it to 1,000 years, so they didn't know old age like we do. You know, so middle age would be maybe you're 600, 700, or 500 years old, and you're middle aged. You could still do most things. You know, that's pretty cool, right? You'd see many generations of children. You see, so things were so bad before the flood that he shortened the lifespans. And, you know, for a while it was 120 years, which we don't know from. That would mean people might have died at, 105, 112, or 129, or 134, or something like that. But that we don't know from, because you'd see children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, great great grandchildren, and maybe even another generation. So you'd have to really work at keeping track of all these descendants you had. Um, so um, that wasn't anything like what we're going to be experiencing, but it was uh, something. Okay, it was something. Um, but we'll be getting a double portion with this everlasting life, and it says, even children get tired, but you'll run and you won't get tired. My people's days shall be like that of a tree. It is likely going to be better than what they had before the flood. Um, Probably because we never had a double portion before. And of course, in the flood, there was a lot of wickedness and stuff as well. And so it's going to be something to experience. Says a child shall die at 100. Now, I don't know if before the flood they had that. I don't know. Maybe they did. Can you imagine a 100-year-old child? I can't. Can you close your eyes and try really hard and imagine this? It's not easy. I mean, does that mean that we're going to have kids in diapers for 35 years or something? Would God do that? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe they stay home as kids and they get married at 100 or something. You got me. But they could be big productive kids. I don't know. We're not going to have schools like we know it, because schools, as we know them, just taught crap. You know, lies about the government, lies about the world, lies about science, lies about this, lies about that. We're not going to have anything like that. There might be ways to teach kids things. I don't know. The Levites maybe do it, but I think what you'll have is more of a apprentice system, where a guy knows how to make dresses, or well, let's use sandals. Guy knows how to make sandals, right? So he gets a young person to come in, a young guy, and works with him and learns how to make sandals. This could be his son. This could be somebody else, a friend of the son of a friend or something, and he just trains that person to be an apprentice, and then that person learns how to do it and can work his own shop and stuff like that. So it could be that way. With furniture making, we're making towels or glassware or building kitchens or houses. You got the idea. So I think it's going to be done with apprentice, and I don't think we're going to be having the same educational stuff that goes on now. I don't think it'll be there. No. I doubt it. Why would it be there? Why is God going to teach us phony economics or lying history or lying astronomy or, it's ridiculous. School is painful for children, and they condition you as a child. They ruin your youth. The demons do that. Sitting in a classroom, instead of having a good youth, you got to go sit there and rot from 8 to 3 most of your life. Going to college, it loosens up tremendously, so it's bad, but not that bad. But you're basically, even in college, learning information that's of no practical value in a godly world. It's, who knows? Who knows? So, if you want prayer, we'll keep doing prayer, even if you haven't gotten healed yet, and you ask for prayer, we'll still do the prayer. But I think I owe it to you to explain to you, you've got to cover the possibility of the sin of commission or omission, and you're getting chastened for that. You've got to look at that. And where you look is you look at the weightier things of the Lord, of the law. Widows, orphans, the stranger, the one from another country, stuff like that, That's, the important thing, okay? We have no temple. We're not doing sacrifices and offerings yet, although soon it'll start. It has not started. So it's not going to be in that realm. So you've got to, it could be the way you treat your animal too. Could be not likely though, unless you're beating the poor thing or something, But, you're feeding them, you're watering them, you're nice to them, that's, you don't have to take them to the movies. You don't have to take them to the steakhouse and buy them a ribeye, But you got to take care of your animal. here. Let me take a look at the live stream. So we're seeing the war from the West Bank heating up. Remember, to lay siege to Jerusalem, surrounded the right hand and left hand. This is Jerusalem. This is the West Bank. It's on the north, the south, and the east. The west is the rest of Israel. So that's where we're headed. That's the next prophetic war. And this is a big compartmentalizing it. I don't believe Trump's going to attack Iran. I don't believe that. If Israel wants to resume the war against Hamas, I don't know what Trump will say. I really don't know. Probably it would depend on why Israel wants to resume it. If Netanyahu says, if I don't resume it, they're going to break up my coalition, I won't be prime minister, I may lose my trial, I don't know what to do. Trump might say, it's your trial, it's your country, it's your war, I'll see you around the campus, and that's the end of that. Or in other words, Trump is saying, I'm just leaving you to your own devices. Or Trump might say, fix it, don't go to war, you know. Because if you go to war, the Houthis are going to start attacking ships, and it's going to force me to attack Yemen, and then I might have to also be forced into attacking Iran. And will that happen? Oh yeah. We know Edom gets devastated, and so does Iran. So yeah, that's going to happen. Is that the way it likely could happen? Yes. Yes. Does it mean this is going to happen at the end of the 6-week ceasefire? No. It could. They may go into phase 2, but I think they're going to, well, we don't know yet. I mean, it's going to happen. Elijah needs a piece of time to train the Levites. That didn't even start yet. So pray for Elijah to get started. That's a good thing. Okay? Keep the prayers coming for Chief. He's mourning over the loss of Yaffa now. He's very lonely. And he's at peace with me when I'm with him, but I can't be with him 24/7. I'm not going to move into the office and sleep in the chair. You know, there's a limit. You know, there's a limit what you do for animals. You know, like my wife says, I don't cook for the animals, I cook for you. So if I start giving them the steak or something like that, she gets upset. Rightly so. We get them excellent dog food, the best brand in Israel. We get them, and you know, we do the best they can. They got a great situation. Here's the front yard and backyard. They can go in and out a lot. They're outside a lot. They're inside when the weather stinks. You know. So I don't know if it's going to rain anymore today. I think it might be an intermittent shower occasionally, but I think it's past. So pray for me and my wife Rivka for our peace, safety, protection, and joy and healing for both of us, and pray for our animals and pets in general, the other ones, the birds and the dogs, they'd be happy, healthy, and whole. And pray for better videos. Pray for the peace of Yerushalayim. And I hope you got something out of this. You can ask me questions if you want. You got my email at the bottom of the description box under the video. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach.